What's up guys, and welcome back to Gabe Miller Music. Today I'm doing a preliminary first impressions review of the Roland MC-101. This is the new-ish, much lusted after groovebox from Roland, and I finally have had a bit of time to work on it. Despite the quarantine, I've been pretty busy both with working from home at my internship and school. So between that and working on other videos on other topics, I haven't had as much time with it as I'd like, but I've used it enough at this point to at least have some preliminary opinions on it. And if you want to give an update to something I said, or a way to mitigate one of the criticisms that I have, or something like that, be sure to drop it in the comments. So here's how this video is going to work. In addition to the little jams that you're going to hear throughout this video, all made using just stock sounds on the MC-101, I'm going to divide this video into the good, the meh, the bad, and then compare it to a couple other groove boxes. Let's start off with the good, and a thing that you will have seen in the jam that you just watched. And this first thing that I really love about the MC-101 is its ability to do multi-track recording live. This thing can function like a little USB audio interface. You plug it into your computer, do a bit of setup. What computer you're using will dictate how that setup goes. In my case, I did have to use an ASIO driver to have all the inputs record at the same time. But once I went through that little bit of setup, I was able to just hit record and get 4 separate tracks for each of the 4 tracks here that I can then process as I want with EQ and compression, add some distortion, effects, some sidechain, all that kind of stuff. I can process all that after the fact, having done a jam live. So it's a cool combination of live jamming on this thing and then doing processing to make it as polished as possible. I've not really seen that in any other groovebox, at least at this size and price range. While I'm holding this, another good thing about this, and I think one thing that gets a lot of people interested, is just look at this thing. It's adorable and it's gorgeous. This is a very well constructed piece of gear, feels really solid. The pads feel okay. That would go more in the meh category, but I love the little sliders, and this thing is definitely surprisingly powerful for its size. I'm a big fan of gear that rides the line between looking like a toy and looking like a really professional piece of equipment, and this one definitely does that. So in terms of appearance and build, this thing's great. Another good thing about the MC-101 is its track count and layout. For drum tracks, you have 1 drum track with a bunch of sounds all in it, and you can have layers of drums, and that only takes up 1 track for like a full drum kit. The other 3 you can dedicate to tone tracks, which are their version of synth tracks. And these function somewhat like Rompler tracks. They're all samples that function somewhat like synth patches. And so you can have 3 synth tracks, bass chords and a lead, or some variation thereof, depending on what you're trying to do, all on this little device, which is great. The only other groovebox at this price range that can do that is the Electribe, and it's quite a bit larger and bulkier. The final thing I really like about the MC-101, and this is something I haven't really taken advantage of yet, but definitely plan to, is the ability to load your own sounds onto it. Even though it sets itself up as a synth, it really is a sample-based device. You can load in your own samples, both for drums and for synths. So if you've got synth one-shots, samples that you want to load in, you can load them in, map them out to the keyboard, and they get pitched around, all that, or you can load in full drum kits, which I think helps make up quite a bit for its lack of sound design capabilities directly on this unit. And once you have loaded in samples, you do get a good amount of control over them and shaping their sound and how they interact with the song further. Moving on to the meh. First of all, I mentioned tweakability just a second ago. It's not as deep as I like. You don't get quite as much control as I'd like. So that's a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, they did a pretty good job with what they had. On the other hand, there's a definite limit on how much you can tweak a synth patch just because it's all sample based, as far as I understand. And speaking of the sounds, let's talk about the sounds because they also are very much a mixed bag. There are some definite gems in here because Roland has a gigantic library of sounds to pick from, including a bunch of vintage gear. So there are a lot of gems to be found in here in terms of built-in sounds, but a decent chunk of them feel kind of flat and kind of weak, especially drums. There's not a whole lot that's super punchy and super modern. A lot of it's a little on the dirtier, weaker, lo-fi-ier side. And while there are a good amount of modern sounds for synths, once again, some of them just don't have the punch that I'd like. But once again, you can bring in your own synth sounds, so that will help future-proof this device somewhat. And finally, the other meh thing, and this is going to be controversial, so bear in mind that this is just my opinion, but the scatter effects are not as useful as I think Roland thinks that they are. For my uses, only about 3 of them are something I would actually use in the context of a song. And using the same 3 scatter effects over and over is gonna get old real quick, so you've gotta exercise some taste and some restraint when using scatter effects. Another bummer about the scatter effects is that they don't, as far as I know, and I could be wrong on this, but they don't affect each individual track, they only affect the master. So if you're recording multi-track into your DAW, those scatter effects don't pick up on anything but the master, and I've actually tried this. There may be a way to change that I don't know about, but that is at least a bit of a bummer and makes them even less useful, at least for my own applications. So scatter effects, fun, not all that useful in my opinion. Moving on to the bad, and this is probably also going to be pretty controversial, so bear in mind that I came up in the world of FL Studio, DAWs, launch pads, and stuff that's built with a certain workflow, modern sensibility, and intuitiveness that you couldn't really achieve in the previous generation of gear that the previous generation of producers before me were using. All that being said, I kind of hate the workflow on this thing. It's not that I couldn't understand it, because after watching a few YouTube tutorials, I was able to navigate it fine, but it's clunky as hell. You spend a whole lot of your time turning and clicking this button and staring at this tiny screen. There is a ton of menu diving. Pretty much everything you actually want to do needs menu diving, hitting shift in some other function, and it's slow, it's kind of momentum killing. It's maybe a little more intuitive than the Electribe, but still, it feels like a holdover from that era of gear, and it's nowhere near as streamlined as the Novation circuit. And some will see this and go, oh, you just couldn't be bothered to get good at it, or you know, you're just a kid who wants something easy and you're just whining about something that's a non-issue. But the intuitiveness of a piece of gear or a piece of software, or really any creative tool, really does matter in terms of getting into a flow state during a session. This workflow and this damn knob slow you down on that. Once again, I do acknowledge that this opinion is largely shaped by the tools I've grown up with and have come into my own with, and they're definitely built to be a lot more user-friendly than old stuff. And also, I've been very much spoiled by the Novation circuit and its pretty much effortless workflow. I've already done some comparisons with the MC-101 to other gear, so let me quickly talk about it in relation to the other 2 groove boxes that I own and use on the regular, the Korg Electribe 2 and the Novation circuit. First, let's answer the very popular question, is this the Novation circuit killer? In my opinion, hell no. Even though this has the ability to export separated tracks like I talked about in the first section of this video, And even though it has more tracks, it's smaller, it's arguably a prettier looking instrument, it still can't compete with the circuit in terms of workflow and in terms of sound engine. And I do want to be very clear, Novation doesn't pay me to whore out the circuit as much as I do. I use it so much, for one thing, because you guys seem to enjoy the videos I make with it, and for another thing, because I definitely consider it my main production station at this point. This doesn't replace the circuit as my main production station. So for the other question, is this the Electribe killer? And I would say also no. The Electribe is a sound design tool as much as it is a groovebox. And so if designing sounds from scratch on the device itself is a crucial part of your workflow, the Electribe is going to serve you much better than the MC-101 will. In a lot of other respects, like its somewhat sample-based workflow and the amount of menu diving, I would say the Electribe and the MC-101 are actually kind of similar. In that way, and ignoring sound design, the MC-101 actually does improve a lot on what Korg did with the Electribe. It's obviously a lot smaller, a lot more portable, a lot prettier, and it's better for exporting individual tracks that you can process later. It's a decent option, but it may not be worth the price, and it's still got a ways to go before it can really go head to head with the big boys. I do like the MC-101, and I'm glad that I bought it, but I don't know if I love it. Anyway, that is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of the MC-101 in a comment down below. Just remember that this is my opinion and there can be multiple right answers when it comes to gear preference. If you'd like to see more groovebox reviews from me, you can click or tap up over here. And if you'd like to see another MC-101 jam from me, you can click or tap down over here.